Welcome to Good Game, I'm Hex.
And I'm Bajo. What's on the playlist this week, Hex?
Heaps. After a break from hiding in the shadows, Garrett returns in the rebooted and reimagined Thief.
We have a first play of DayZ Standalone to see if it does actually stand alone.
Plus, Goose checks out the 60s-inspired psychedelic spy comedy, Jazzpunk.
But before all that frivolity, can you name the game for this week?
All right, it's time for some headlines at the news desk with Goose.
Irrational Games, the developer responsible for BioShock, has announced it will be closing down its studio. Co-founder Ken Levine broke the news that all but 15 staff will be laid off. Levine and the remaining employees will form a smaller studio to focus on narrative-driven games and develop a more direct relationship with their audience. Former Microsoft creative director Adam Orth is using the events of last year as inspiration for an upcoming sci-fi game. Orth became notorious last year after making a string of angry public comments about the Xbox One's internet requirements. After resigning, he has since relocated to California and founded a small indie studio to work on his new game, Adrift, that will focus on an isolated astronaut attempting to repair a disaster on a space station. It seems Australians are now spending more money on digital games than on actual boxed copies. According to research group NPD, last year close to 900 million was spent digitally across console, PC and mobile games, with microtransactions accounting for half of this revenue. In contrast, just over 650 million was spent on physical software, marking its third year in decline. After an announcement back in 2008, Doom 4 has finally re-emerged, now simply branded Doom and with an online beta on the way. We asked Bethesda's Pete Hines if it's a reboot for the series.
We specifically used Doom in a vague sense without putting any number because we didn't really want to get into that other than to just say, yes, there is a Doom game coming and you get into the beta for that without going any more than that. So we'll have to wait and see what we have in store.
And finally, the French government has announced it will award veteran game designer David Cage with its highest decoration, the Legion of Honor. Cage, who is best known for his work on Beyond Two Souls and Heavy Rain, will be the first person from the games industry to ever receive the honour, which was originally established in 1802 by Napoleon Bonaparte, star of the Total War games. No, he was. And that's all the news for this week. Back to you, Bajo and Hex.
Thanks, Goose. Well, here at Good Game, we're big fans of DayZ mods, so over the holidays we were feverishly excited to check out the long-awaited standalone version. The game is still in alpha testing, so these are just our first play impressions.
They're on me! If you haven't played DayZ before, then you don't know the sheer joy that can come from finding a can of unopened beans in a video game. It's an open-world zombie survivalist experience with permadeath, where your biggest challenge isn't the zombies, it's getting on with other players.
Hey, can you spare any of them bullets?
It's one of the most interesting and important games in recent years, not only for what it's done for community-driven game development, but in many ways it's created a new genre of sorts in open-ended game design.
DayZ's alpha status means it's still missing a lot of features and is rapidly getting patched all the time. In fact, so much of what we talk about here could already be different. After how fully fleshed out the mod has become, Bajo, Standalone by comparison does feel a little bit barren at times, and that's understandable for alpha stage, but can't help but feel a little bit underwhelmed. There's very few zombies around and they don't do much. Many weapons simply don't work or do enough damage.
I'm okay.
The thing that I really struggle with Standalone Hex is that in the big cities, it still frames up. You can't get over 25 frames per second, even with an amazing rig. And as a gamer, I just don't understand that. I'm sure it's a limitation of the Armor engine, or maybe it just needs more optimization, but by now, it should be smooth.
Yeah, but this is a big engine rewrite with new network code to make DayZ more of a player versus player MMO.
And he's just spraying blood. That's who we're after.
Got it.
He's got nothing on him though. Oh no, run!
It might not technically be all there yet, but there are still huge improvements all round, setting Standalone on a path to being less mod-like and more like a full game. For example, it takes seconds to get into a game now, which is my new favourite feature. I used to hate just waiting hours and hours just to get into a game, and then even still I'd get booted. I just don't have that kind of patience. I just want it to work. And now it does.
There's also lots of little tweaks to the movement system now, and they've ironed out some of that awkwardness. You run much faster now, especially if you put your gun away. But then you're also more vulnerable because you can't raise your weapon and fire in an instant.
Hello.
And there's some lighting improvements too. Most importantly though, there are new game mechanics which play into the survival theme. You can become very sick if you eat bad food or get an infection from bad water, so finding a pristine banana or can of beans is a pretty amazing feeling.
I really like the idea of introducing things like sickness. I mean, that's something that would actually happen, and it's another real-world thing to think about. I also like the new user interface and inventory system. Compared to most games, it's still pretty fiddly, but for returning mod players, it's a huge step up.
I liked how much of the map had changed. There's a lot of new buildings and encampments, and almost every building can be entered now. Also, the inclusion of things like new emotes and handcuffs throws into the mix new ways to harass other players. The idea of handcuffing other players or putting a sack over their heads might sound like a pretty nasty thing to do to another player in a game, but it's dangerous ideas and emotions like this, which is why DayZ is so interesting.
Is that thing loaded?
Essentially, it's a social experiment, and that's why we keep coming back to this game again and again.
Put the torch on the ground. Okay, get up slowly now and run in the opposite direction. And I won't shoot you in the back. I just held someone up with their torch. I love this game.
Most of my experiences with Standalone, though, have ended in swift death.
Hello. I haven't seen anyone in like 6 hours. And you're the first person I've seen.
Then you and your dead, brother.
I think you'll find I'm not dead, I'm unconscious. It's good to be accurate. Now I'm dead.
But Goose has actually had a few more interactions with other players and gangs than we have with Standalone, and in fact he found one gang that stole his pants.
Okay, sorry. This guy's stealing our pants, Pete.
You got the bloody pen.
That's awesome.
This is amazing.
On your knees. Everyone on your knees.
So you're the pants bandits I've been hearing about.
Now, everyone put on the person to their left.
God, I don't know which one how do I know which one were my pants and...
These ones right here, right in front of you.
You just walked into the wrong place to be.
Scoundrels, a lot of them.
Yeah.
I do think the vibe at the moment, though, is that no one really knows what to do because there's so much functionality missing.
I'm watching what appears to be a boxing match.
There are big plans in the works for this game, though, from defibrillators to long-term health problems to blood transfusions that rely on specific blood types. It is hard to recommend this game in its current state, though. If you do still need your DayZ fix, we recommend playing something like DayZ Epoch mod, which is polished, has things like creepy NPC vendors, and supply drops which lead to intense standoffs.
Get away from my crate. No. Run away, run away.
Yeah, Epoch is great. It even has smelting. And I like how you can pull your bike out of your backpack, ride to another town, then put it away and continue looting. Back to Standalone though, mostly the game right now is about fashion. There's such a variety of gear you can wear, and better clothes means more inventory space. Brighter clothes or backpacks make you a bigger target though, so there are more choices you have to make about everything you put on.
We'll come back to DayZ for our full review when it's finally finished, hopefully later this year.
And now, back to Goose.
Jazzpunk is a first-person espionage puzzler that doesn't try to take itself too seriously. In fact, the game is so far from anything serious that it wouldn't be unfair to call the game a joke. But if you're the kind of person that likes a good joke, or a bad one for that matter, then Jazzpunk might just be the game for you.
Return to plans.
Thankfully, you made it.
Taking place in a cyberpunk-inspired alternate reality, you play as Polyblank, a silent protagonist in a very loud and colourful world that's bursting with hyper-stylized shapes and sounds.
Whoa, where'd you get that crazy hand from?
It's also a world inhabited by some very strange and surreal characters.
The director will see you now.
The first of these you'll meet is your alcoholic agency director, who works from a train carriage in an abandoned subway. He proceeds to send you off on a number of retro spy movie-inspired missions to classic locales like a Russian embassy, tiki resort, or sushi restaurant. And you'll do all of this via a healthy dose of hallucinogen missionol. If this all sounds a bit too ridiculous, then pull the emergency brake and get off now, because the game only gets weirder and weirder, and then a bit weirder again.
Quick, look behind you.
You see, each of the 5 or so short chapters in Jazzpunk contains a main objective, like tailing someone or infiltrating a computer lab. But these serve as merely the catalyst for a whole assortment of weird and downright wacky distractions that make up the bulk of the game's appeal. Each environment is littered with interactions just begging to be clicked on. Everything from double entendre dialogue with bystanders,
Pick me up a MacGuffin and a coffee.
non sequiturs,
Please sign into our guest book.
physical slapstick, Wilhelm scream included, sight gags aplenty, as well as a heap of madcap minigames, ranging from fly swatting in a vase store, a cat scratching simulator, or my personal favourite, Wedding Quake, where you get to make your vows with a vengeance.
Prenuptial agreement.
You can spend as little or as much time as you want hunting down these little Easter eggs, but your desire to do so will depend greatly on your sense of humour, and that's because everything in Jazzpunk is trying very, very hard to make you laugh. I say trying because the sheer amount of jokes the game will throw at you can be a bit overwhelming at times, and when these gags hit their mark, they can be comedy gold.
There's a bug on my shoulder! Get it off, get it off, get it off! Thanks. You're the best.
But for every one that sticks, another 3 failed gags will usually just sail past without even as much as a chuckle.
I have 4th-degree burns all over my entire face.
Other times, I found myself forgetting what the mission was because the game was so busy trying to distract me with what I was quickly discovering to be rather pointless diversions. Eventually, after being bombarded by every form of comedy the game could throw at me, I became a bit numb to it all, and a joke that would have been totally lore-worthy in the first chapter of the game, by the end, could only really muster up a forced,
Flame to my gaping jowls.
And while it's not entirely fair to criticise a game just for trying to make you laugh, when the rest of the game suffers for it, then it is hard to justify pushing through a slog of endless puns and juvenile punchlines. As a game, without its sense of humour, Jazzpunk doesn't really have a leg to stand on. The puzzles are simple and rudimentary, the mini-games lack any punishment or reward system, and the introspective, self-aware story kind of falls flat when you compare it to more meta experiences in games like The Stanley Parable or Gravity Bone. I guess it is admirable to see a game focusing solely on comedy, because it is a hard thing to get right in video games, and it's this endearing determination to make you laugh that did help me look past a lot of Jazzpunk's more glaring flaws. That said, the game lying beneath the gags here is only mildly entertaining at best, so I'm giving it 5.5 out of 10.
How I got into the industry and my first job on a game team, I actually started off in the modding community, and I was making a mod for Battlefield 2. When I graduated from high school, there was no colleges that offered game design courses or anything like that. So it was, you kind of had to probably know somebody or have, you know, some way of getting in. And that didn't happen for me. And a bit older, and 1942 comes out, I was blown away, and it really re-inspired me. And so I started doing modding. Then I got a job at QA at EA because I wanted to work in the industry so bad. I went to EA, who was nearby where I was living, and so that was great. Started doing QA for Battlefield, and then finally got a chance to get an interview with DayZ, and DayZ actually hired me, and something that seemed almost impossible actually happened, and then that was my first job. So being an assistant designer on Battlefield 2142.
I need a mechanic. Don't move! Don't even! The architect! Murder! I can't.
The classic first-person stealth series Thief has had a reboot, with this new Thief being the 4th game since the 1998 original. Like other iconic character-driven franchises such as Tomb Raider with Lara Croft, we were excited to see how Garrett would be reimagined. You're a big fan of the Thief games, weren't you, Badger? How did you feel about his man corset?
Fabulous. Garrett is one of my all-time favorite video game characters, and I loved how tough those original games were too. You had to rely on the shadows and really figure out how to be as stealthy as possible through some very tough scenarios. But almost immediately, this reboot wasn't what I expected.
I had a feeling you might say that. I'm a newcomer to this franchise, and being a lover of stealth and climbing, as well as tough but brooding protagonists, this game is right up my alley.
Whoever's there, show yourself.
There's one thing this city's taught me. You can put a price on anything.
After being away from his hometown, the city, for some time, Garrett returns to find it being ruled over by a tyrant called the Baron, who only caters to the needs of the rich. Meanwhile, the poor are overtaken with a plague known as the Gloom.
We've been hauling corpses since dawn. We just want this day to be done.
Did you hear this lazy gutter shite? Consider yourself lucky you're pulling that card and not in it.
The city itself is so grand and beautiful, isn't it?
Man, those views and cityscapes. It's got this wonderful Gothic Victorian inspiration to it. Dark, moody, and filled with the kind of architecture that's just pure playground to a nimble thief. The first-person perspective lends itself perfectly to the movement system they've devised for this game. Everything just feels really fluid and just a joy to navigate. We reviewed this on PC, but I should say that I played with the controller hooked up, and that felt much better.
Yeah, the keyboard controls felt a little awkward and took me ages to get used to. I love that sway he does when he runs, though. It's very subtle, but just perfect. But my favorite move is that swoop where he can move from shadow to shadow. It's a great way to move through small patches of light.
Yeah, it really gives you that Angel of the Night vibe, doesn't it? Stealth is always your #1 objective. And as you enter buildings, alleyways, ruins, and mansions, you'll find the environment littered with noisy dangers to avoid. Broken glass.
The city will begin again, brother.
Urns that shatter if you bump them. Noisy caged birds. Oh, shut up. Even traps. But they can all be easily detected with your thief vision or focus.
This is where the game became really frustrating for me because it just loves to babysit you. You're led through the entire game with an objective marker on your screen. You've also got your magical thief focus vision, which lets you know where all of your danger zones are. It's not the thief that I remember.
You know, it almost feels like this reimagining is trying to adhere to some particular play style or set of mechanics that maybe the devs think gamers want or need from modern games, as if they might get frustrated being left to their own devices too much.
Yeah, I can see that, but Skyrim left me to my own devices, and that's a modern game, and it didn't hurt the game at all. Sure, there are still a number of obstacles to overcome, noise, light, hidden objects to steal, but then you just handed the solution on a platter, and that's pretty much the game, and I was very disappointed.
Yeah, I guess things like focus vision can feel like a bit of a cheat, but it's such a common device now, it's a mechanic included for efficiency. I mean, I think it's fair to say that some gamers would lose patience if half the game was about searching every little nook and cranny for one item.
I understand that, but I just think it could have been balanced a little bit better. In fairness, you can play around with a custom difficulty setting to make it more challenging, and that's great, but you can't change it on the fly, so I didn't want to go back and start the whole game again if I wasn't happy.
Yeah, I don't think I felt in any way threatened until a few hours in when I got to the brothel. The guards you encounter in the street are far too weak, and it's not until you run into other thief-like NPCs with swords that you have to start being really careful. There is combat in this game, but it's fairly basic strike and dodge stuff and designed to be avoided, which is fair enough. You're a thief, not a ninja.
Yeah, Garrett isn't meant to be a fighter.
He's here!
I thought the game did get off to a pretty slow start.
Yeah, the story is a little washy and unclear at first, and Garrett even gets a case of boring amnesia, which I hate.
Where the hell have you been?
I don't know.
Yeah, me too. Not to mention his annoying inner monologue.
Okay. Seems someone's expecting me. Something's not right. I'll make the clock tower clear my head. I feel like I can think and act faster than normal when I concentrate.
You can turn that off, thankfully. The first 2 hours of the game pretty much felt like just looting. I know you're a thief, and that's what thieves do, steal stuff, but this got pretty tedious. I also felt there were a lot of those moments where control was taken away from you to play out an animation when stealing, and it's not heaps, but it's just a little bit too much happening in this game.
Really? No, I don't mind that at all, especially in first-person games. You know, I like to see my hands out there and doing stuff.
I like seeing the hands too. I just think he does it too slowly. He's a master thief. Grab it and go.
He's gotta be stealthy about it. He can't just be banging and crashing through cupboards and drawers. No, I really liked that detail. I thought it was really polished. I did find it interesting though that you're pretty much kitted out with all of your gadgets from within an hour of play. There's maybe 1 or 2 inconsequential items you pick up later, but there's no real drip feed of gear.
Yeah, I almost felt overwhelmed with all the different arrows and items I had on me at the start, but without as many opportunities to use them as I would like. I used water arrows a lot.
Yeah, me too. They're pretty much all I used, actually. I do like, though, that if you extinguish a sconce with a water arrow, that the guard will then light it again really quickly, so your window of opportunity for a takedown is quite small.
I also only used a rope arrow once, and I think that was in the tutorial.
I think the one time I tried to use a fire arrow, I set myself on fire. But I'm an idiot, so...
Great job.
I think it's a nice touch, though, that they show you a little pie graph at the end of each chapter of your play style. And that's whether you played aggressively in plain sight, or focus more on stealth takedowns, or even ghosting through completely.
I know I've been pretty negative on this game, Hex, but it does get better the further you play through. There are some interesting puzzles and a cool mansion you break into, which at least in some ways harkens back to the earlier games. You have a number of guards blocking the entrance to the building, and you have to find a way in. And there's lots of perils like guard dogs and flickering light patches waiting to expose you. The whole game should have been like that.
Yeah, I like that chapter a lot. In fact, I played through it a few times just because I thought I could do it a little bit better. There's a number of diversions you can create to draw guards away from the entrance. But then on another attempt, I also found other sneaky ways to get in there, so it's nice that they thought about giving you lots of options.
I like that it took a survival horror turn halfway through, which is another nod to the originals.
Bard. Were they trying to keep something out or in?
Oh man, is there anything more terrifying than an insane asylum? After a relatively cruisy start to the game, I was not expecting this. And I know it's been done before, but anytime you see mannequins, and then this happens?
Yeah, super creepy. And even though this section had nothing to do with thieving, except I did steal some gold syringes, it was the first point where the plot really started to grab me. So what did you think of this reboot overall, Hex?
Well, I mean, that's just it. For me, this isn't a reboot. I've never played a Thief game before, so I was coming to this fresh. It was slow to start, but, you know, after things got going and the story picked up, I did warm to it quite a bit. I think the city and the world that had been created around Garrett is what saved the experience for me. It just wasn't anything new or surprising, which is a shame.
The bottom line for me is it didn't capture that magic of the original Thief games. I never found the stakes were high enough. The world feels a bit boxy, and I just miss that freedom of total exploration.
Halt where you are!
So, I'm giving it 6 out of 10 rubber chickens.
It's 7 from me.
Well, that's it for this week, but before we go, we've also been playing the Titanfall beta, and I know it's early days, Hex, but I'm I'm really excited about it. I was surprised at how much fun it is. It's kind of like they've taken the best parts from Call of Duty and Halo and put them together with mechs.
It's thrilling leaping from Titan to Titan, and I think they've balanced it really well, even when you're a pilot on foot with your anti-Titan gun. Then unleashing devastation on the map in your own Titan, and ejecting into the air when your machine is failing.
Eject! Eject! There's heaps of time to eject. Relax.
And it's just refreshing to play a shooter that feels a bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. It does feel a little claustrophobic right now, though. I hope final release has some bigger maps. But what I like most of all is you can just jump into this and instantly be at home with the controls and have a quick go, but there's still room for lots of customization and strategy there.
Yeah, and it's so exciting when you hear those words, your Titan is ready.
Hey, your Titan's good to go. Call it when ready. Transferring control to pilot.
And I like that there's a nice amount of strategy of, when to use your shield and when to dodge, but we'll have our full review when the game is released.
But for now, can you name the game for this week? It was the classic arcade title 005. Made and released by Sega in 1981, it was your mission to deliver a briefcase filled with secret documents to an awaiting helicopter. And it's our Name the Game this week in honor of our Thief review, because it's considered to be the very first stealth game.
Next week on the show, it's DLC galore. We review both The Last of Us Left Behind and Assassin's Creed 4 Freedom Cry.
A warrior like you would be a great asset to our cause.
What do you need?
Back when I was bitten, I wasn't alone. My best friend was there.
Ellie!
Oh, are you kidding me?
Come on.
Plus, we check out the 41st installment of the Castlevania series, Lords of Shadow 2.
Really?
Yeah.
41st?
Yeah. The internet says that, and the internet is never wrong.
Game over. I am the blood that runs through your veins.
Over on Spawn Point, our show for younger gamers on ABC3 this weekend, we pew-pew our way through Strike Vector.
But until next week, Bajo out.
Hex out.
I'd just like it to be known that I'm still here with my hands on my head, so I'm just gonna wait this out.